They shot me in the head. I remember the cold sting of the bullet slicing through the air before it hit me. I was running through the forest, panting, stumbling over roots and branches, try to reach the Allied safe zone. The last thing I saw was a flash, like a star exploding right in front of my eyes. Then everything went dark. Just silence. No pain. Just nothing. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on a rough wooden bed inside a dusty barack. My head throbbed like it was being hammered from the inside. I reached up and touched my scalp, bandaged. Fresh. Clean. Not like what you'd expect from the enemy. Then I noticed it. The uniform. It wasn't mine. I was wearing gray. Not olive green. My chest had a black cross stitched over a red armband. A Nazi uniform. My heart started racing. I tried to sit up. I was dizzy, but awake enough to realize that something had gone terribly wrong. That's when the door creaked open, and a soldier with sharp blue eyes stepped in. He looked at me, then smiled. "Guten Morgen, Kamerad," he said. "Welcome back." My blood ran cold. Then he reached into his coat. Just 2 weeks earlier, I was stationed in France, part of a small American recon unit operating behind enemy lines. We were moving through an abandoned village near the Ardennes forest. It was freezing. Snow fell softly, covering broken windows and collapsed roofs like sugar on burnt bread. There were 5 of us, all huddled behind what used to be a bakery. Captain Mills, our leader, was giving orders in a whisper. "We're crossing through the woods tonight. No fires. No noise. We've got Krauts patrolling every corner from here to Brussels." I nodded, clutching my rifle tighter. I hadn't slept in 2 days. Not properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the faces of the men we'd lost last week. Tommy, Rodriguez, Peterson, all gone. We crossed after midnight. No moon, just the sound of our boots crunching on ice. I kept looking back, nervous. Something didn't feel right. Suddenly, we heard it. A branch snapping behind us. We froze. Captain Mills motioned for us to split and hide. I dove behind a fallen log. My heart pounded in my throat. Then the shouting began. "Hand hoch! Hand hoch!" German voices. Lights flashed. Gunshots exploded around us. I ran. Everyone scattered. Someone screamed. Someone else cried out, "I'm hit." I didn't look back. I just kept running. It was pitch dark, and I couldn't tell which way was north anymore. The trees felt like walls closing in. I ran and ran until my lungs burned. That's when I saw the small hill and climbed it. At the top, I dropped to my knees, exhausted. And that's when it happened. A sharp crack rang out. My head jerked back. Then blackness. No time to scream. No time to say goodbye. But now, here I was, alive, and wearing a Nazi uniform. The soldier who walked in didn't shoot me. He sat down on a chair beside my bed and offered me a tin cup of water. "Drink," he said in German. I hesitated, pretended I didn't understand. He frowned. "You're not right in the head, are you?" he said in English. "Don't worry. That happens when you take a bullet like that." I sipped the water slowly, watching him. Where am I?" I asked. "Army hospital. We found you during the sweep near Montigny. You were half dead. No ID. We thought you were one of ours. Strange, though, you had no dog tags." I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing. Did they not recognize me as American? Were they playing a trick? I don't remember much, I lied. "Ah," he nodded, as if that explained everything. "Amnesia. War does that." He stood up. "Rest. Doctor says you'll be on your feet by next week. You're lucky. They were going to leave you for dead." And then he was gone. I sat there in silence, heart racing. I had to get out. Fast. That night, I pretended to sleep, but I kept my ears open. There were 2 guards outside the door. I could hear their boots scrape against the floor. One of them smoked. The other coughed every few minutes. I looked around the room. No windows, just wooden walls and 1 locked door. I touched my chest. No dog tags. No clues to who I was. They really believed I was German. I waited. Then I made my plan. The next morning, I acted confused. I asked questions like a lost man. "Who am I?" I whispered to the nurse. "You're Franz," she replied without looking up. "Franz Bauer, from Dresden." I nodded slowly, hiding my shock. They gave me a name, a new identity. And just like that, I wasn't Private Lee Carter of the U.S. Army anymore. I was Franz Bauer, German soldier. But I knew I couldn't pretend forever. Sooner or later, someone would see through the cracks. Especially the man who came that night. He had a scar over his left eye and wore a long black coat. He walked into my room silently, like a ghost. He didn't smile. He just stared at me for a long time. Then he said something that made my stomach twist into knots. "You don't look like Franz." My breath caught in my throat. "You don't look like Franz," the man said again, stepping closer. He had a jagged scar that sliced through his eyebrow, down to his cheekbone. His eyes were sharp, like they were used to spotting lies in a single blink. He didn't blink now. He just kept staring at me like I was some strange animal in a zoo. I tried to speak, but my mouth was dry. I don't remember," I stammered, keeping my voice low, unsure. He narrowed his eyes. "Is that so?" He walked to the foot of my bed and pulled out a small black notebook. "Franz Bauer," he read aloud, flipping the pages. "Transferred from the Eastern Front. Last seen alive after the Minsk retreat. Shot in the head. Presumed dead." He looked up at me again. "Now here you are. No memory. No accent. And yet, you speak German like a schoolboy." I swallowed hard. He leaned in closer. "You're not Franz," he whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. "So who are you?" My fingers dug into the rough blanket beneath me. If I told the truth, I'd be shot within the hour. If I kept pretending, he'd see through it. "I don't know," I said finally, forcing my face to shake like I was terrified. I only remember the sound of gunfire. I was bleeding. Then I woke up here. The man studied me for a long time. Too long. Then finally, he closed the notebook and straightened his coat. "We'll see," he said coldly. "I'll be back tomorrow. You'd better remember something by then." And then he was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. That scar-faced officer, he knew. Or at least, he suspected. If I didn't find a way to escape before he came back, I'd end up in front of a firing squad. The next morning, I got out of bed, still a little dizzy. I was allowed to walk with the help of a cane. They thought I was healing. They thought I was one of them. The nurse handed me a tray of food. I forced myself to eat, even though my stomach was turning knots. The bread was stale. The soup was gray and smelled like boiled socks. But I ate every bite. I needed strength. Then I noticed something. The guard by the door. He kept stepping away for short walks down the corridor. Every 15 minutes. Like clockwork. Maybe to smoke. Maybe to flirt with a nurse. I didn't care. I just saw a crack in the routine. I timed it. 1 minute and 20 seconds. That's how long I had. That afternoon, I asked to go to the latrine, which was down the hallway. The nurse escorted me halfway there, then turned her back to answer another soldier who'd slipped on a mop bucket nearby. I didn't wait. I ducked into the nearest supply closet, closed the door, and held my breath. Seconds passed. Then minutes. Voices outside. Footsteps. Laughter. Then silence. I eased the door open and peeked out. The hallway was empty. I stepped out, heart pounding, walking fast but not running. I passed a group of soldiers gathered near a bulletin board. One of them saluted me. I nodded back. They didn't suspect a thing. Outside, snow covered the ground like a thick sheet. Trucks rumbled across the camp. A small convoy was preparing to leave, heading west. I made my way toward the back, where the storage tents were. If I could just slip inside one of those trucks. That's when I heard it. "Hey, you." I turned slowly. It was the scar-faced officer. He was pointing at me. I froze. He marched over and grabbed my arm roughly. "Where do you think you're going, Franz?" he hissed. I was told to help with supplies. I replied, trying to sound calm. "By who?" I blinked. "I don't know his name, tall, with blonde hair." He studied me again. "Then let go." "Fine," he said. "Then you won't mind if I walk you there myself." I smiled weakly, my insides churning like broken gears. He led me through the snow toward a large wooden shed near the edge of the camp. We walked in silence. Once inside, I looked around. Boxes, barrels, tools, a lantern flickering in the corner. He shut the door behind us. Then he turned to face me. "You know," he said softly, "my brother died in Minsk." I didn't answer. He stepped closer. They sent his body home in pieces. Said a grenade got him, but his dog tags were missing. His uniform gone. He raised an eyebrow. "And then you show up." I felt my knees weakening. "You think I'm your brother?" I asked. He stared at me. "No," he said, "but I think you know what happened to him." I shook my head. "I swear I don't." Then he reached into his coat. I stepped back, thinking he was about to draw a pistol. Instead, he pulled out a photograph. It was torn and crumpled, but I recognized the man instantly. He had the same scar, only this one ran on the opposite cheek. And he was wearing an American uniform. "That's not your brother," I said without thinking. "That's—" I stopped. Too late. He had caught it. "You do know him," the officer whispered. "So who are you?" I stared at him. My mouth opened, and then the door behind us burst open. 3 soldiers stormed in, rifles raised. One shouted, "Halt!" but not in German, in English. I turned to the officer. He grabbed me by the collar and yanked me toward him, putting his back to the Americans. And he said just one thing: "You're coming with me. Now run." I didn't think. I just ran. The officer shoved me ahead of him, pushing through crates and barrels as the American soldiers opened fire. Bullets cracked past my ears, splinters flying from wooden beams around us. We burst out the back of the shed, into the snow. Cold air slapped my face. My legs felt like lead, but adrenaline kept them moving. The officer was right behind me, grabbing my coat to keep me from slipping. "Don't stop," he barked. We dove into a shallow ditch just as more shots rang out. I panted, staring at the officer. "Why are you helping me?" He didn't answer right away. He peeked over the ditch, checking if they were following. "They're not far. We need to move." "But why?" I asked again. "You were about to hand me over." He looked at me, really looked. "No," he said. "I was about to test you. And you passed." I shook my head. "What are you talking about?" He pulled out the photo again. My brother was captured at Minsk. He was forced into your side's uniform to spy for the Germans. But then he vanished. I think your people killed him to keep him from talking. I stared at the picture again. That face, it did look familiar. But my head still ached, and flashes of memories were scrambled, like puzzle pieces scattered across a cold floor. "So what? Now you think I can help you find out what happened to him?" "No," he said simply. "Now I know you're not who you say you are. And if you're smart, you'll help me disappear too." We crawled along the ditch until we reached a small shed by the perimeter fence. Inside, he quickly pulled off his coat and stripped off his Nazi insignia. "You're not the only one pretending," he muttered. "What do you mean?" He looked at me and smiled for the first time. "I've been faking it since 1943. Intelligence work. Deep cover. British-German family. They picked me because of my German accent. My heart raced. You're a spy. Was. But they cut me loose when my brother vanished. Now I just want out." I sat down on an overturned bucket, trying to process it all. "So what do we do now?" He opened a wooden crate and pulled out 2 tattered overcoats, civilian, stained, and plain. "We vanish," he said. "South, through the old supply roads. I have contacts in the resistance." Just then, we heard the sound of trucks, several of them, pulling up outside the camp. "Reinforcements," he muttered. "That means they'll lock this place down. We have to go now." I hesitated. "If we get caught, they'll kill us both." I stood up. "Then let's move." We waited until nightfall. The camp was crawling with patrols. Floodlights swept the fences. Dogs barked. Radios crackled with orders. We slipped past the main road, crawling through bushes and over snowbanks. At one point, we lay flat as a group of soldiers passed just 2 feet away. One of them stopped. He turned. We held our breath. Then he sneezed, cursed in German, and walked on. We kept moving. After hours of sneaking, we reached a narrow frozen river at the edge of the woods. "We follow this down," the officer said. "There's an abandoned farmhouse another 2 kilometers away. From there, we can regroup." I nodded, my legs shaking from exhaustion. My head still ached from the bullet wound, but I knew I had to keep going. We were halfway across the ice when it cracked beneath us. "Stop," he whispered. We froze. The ice creaked again. Then silence. We moved slowly, inch by inch, spreading our weight. Suddenly, a flare burst in the sky behind us. A red light lit up the whole river. We turned. Soldiers were running toward us, shouting, pointing. "They found us," I whispered. He grabbed my arm. "Run." We took off, boots skidding across the frozen river. The ice cracked louder. Then, a shot rang out. I stumbled. The officer grabbed me. Then another shot. He cried out, falling to his knees. "No!" I shouted. He was clutching his side, blood pouring through his coat. More gunfire. I drag him across the last few feet of the riverbank, bullets slamming into the ice behind us. We collapsed behind a pile of rocks at the base of a hill. He was breathing hard, pale, eyes fluttering. "I can't go on," he gasped. "No," I said. "We're almost there. You can't give up now." He pulled something from his pocket, a small, folded paper. "Coordinates," he said, pressing it into my hand. "Give this to a man named Gaspard. Resistance. Tell him I sent you." I gripped the paper tightly. "You're coming too." But he shook his head. "I slowed you down enough." Tears stung my eyes. He pushed me away gently. "Go." I turned to run, but then a bright light hit my back. I looked up. 3 soldiers stood on the hill above. One of them raised his rifle. I dove behind the rocks just as the rifle cracked. Snow exploded where I'd been standing a second before. My chest heaved, lungs screaming for air. I looked down. My coat was ripped, but the bullet had missed. Just barely. The man who'd helped me, now bleeding out behind the rock, clenched his jaw and tried to lift himself up. He reached for his pistol with shaky hands, but I pushed it back down. "No," I whispered. "Stay still. I'll handle this." I peeked around the rock. The soldiers were spreading out, walking cautiously down the slope with rifles ready. Their boots crunched in the snow. One shouted a command in German. I couldn't understand the exact words, but I got the meaning. Surrender. I gritted my teeth. We were trapped. I looked around, desperate. Then I saw it. A crumbled tree trunk, half buried in the snow, to our right. If we could crawl toward it and slide into the ravine behind, we might have a chance. But he couldn't crawl. Not anymore. I had to choose. Stay and get caught. Or run. He grabbed my sleeve again. "Take it," he said. "Go. I'm not leaving you. You have to. It's the only way this matters. If they get that paper, everything's lost." I hesitated. He looked me dead in the eyes. "They already think I'm a traitor. Let me give them a reason." His words hit like a punch to the stomach. I nodded once, forcing myself to move. Staying low, I crawled through the snow, the paper gripped tightly in my hand. My heart pounded louder than the boots thudding nearby. One soldier came within 6 feet of me. I froze behind a bush, barely breathing. Then I heard it. Gunfire. But not at me. Back at the rock. He was shooting, giving me cover. I didn't look back. I ran. Branches scratched my face as I slid into the ravine and tumbled down, rolling through frozen leaves and mud. I hit the bottom hard, gasping, but I was alive. I kept crawling. All night. When morning came, I found a farmhouse he'd told me about. It was old and half-burned, with broken windows and a sagging roof. I crawled inside and collapsed on the wooden floor. Then I passed out. When I woke up, it was nearly dark again. I staggered to my feet and searched the house. It was empty, except for a single candle, half melted, and a wool blanket that smelled like smoke. I wrapped it around myself and checked the paper he'd given me. The coordinates were scribbled in pencil. Beside them, "Tell Gaspard, the Raven flew south." That was the code. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it was important. That night, I listened to the sounds of the forest. Dogs barking, planes flying overhead. Somewhere far off, a train rumbled past. In the morning, I set off south. It took 2 days, mostly walking by night and hiding by day. I drank from melted snow and ate what little I found in abandoned cottages. My head still throbbed, and the pain came in waves, sometimes sharp, sometimes dull. But I kept going. Finally, I reached the village the coordinates pointed to. Small, quiet, tucked in a valley. I walked straight into the bakery on the corner, just like the directions said. Inside, the smell of bread hit me like a memory from another life. A woman in her 60s stood behind the counter, kneading dough. I cleared my throat. She looked up. "I'm looking for Gaspard," I said. Her eyes narrowed. "Wrong shop." I stepped closer and whispered, "The Raven flew south." She froze. Then, without a word, she turned and disappeared into the back room. A few moments later, a man stepped out. Tall, with a short beard and a long coat. He looked me up and down. "You brought something?" I handed him the paper. He unfolded it, studied it, then looked at me again. "Where's the officer?" My chest tightened. He didn't make it. Gaspard nodded solemnly. He was one of the good ones. Then he pointed toward the basement door. "Come. It's not safe to talk here." I followed him down into a stone cellar lit by oil lamps. Maps hung on walls. Radios crackled softly. There were crates of ammunition and stacks of old uniforms. "You were the American, right?" he asked. I flinched. "You know," he gave a small smile. "He told us that if something ever happened to him, a soldier wearing the wrong uniform might come looking for help." I sat on a wooden stool, exhausted. "I need to get back. I need to tell my people what I saw." "You will," Gaspard said. "But first, we have to get you out of here. The Nazis are tightening every road out of this region. We'll need a truck. And papers." He turned to the others. "We leave at dawn." I nodded, feeling relief finally begin to wash over me. But it was short-lived. Just then, a massive explosion shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling. Screams erupted upstairs. Gaspard grabbed his rifle. "We've been found." The cellar trembled as another explosion rocked the bakery above us. Crates toppled. Glass shattered. Someone screamed in French. Gaspard grabbed a lantern and shoved it into my hands. Through the back tunnel. "Now!" I followed him as he led us deeper underground, past rows of crates, and into a tight stone corridor hidden behind a false wall. The ceiling was low. I had to duck. The air smelled of damp earth and gunpowder. Behind us, 2 resistance fighters pulled the false wall shut. We ran. The tunnel twisted and turned. I could hear the chaos above, boots stomping, guns firing, people shouting. Then it faded as we moved further underground. Finally, we reached a wooden ladder. Gaspard climbed first, then waved me up. When I reached the top, I pushed open a small hatch and emerged into a field of hay. We were inside a barn. The back doors were already open, moonlight pouring through. 2 resistance trucks waited outside, engines rumbling low. We split up. Gaspard ordered. "They'll expect us to head south, so we go east." I followed him into the second truck. Inside, there were 5 others, young, tired, silent. One of them handed me a civilian coat and a cap. I threw them on over the Nazi uniform. I wanted to tear the thing off, burn it, but not yet. Not while it still helped me hide. The truck lurched forward, bouncing along an icy dirt road. No headlights, only the sound of the engine and the whistle of wind through the trees. I sat in silence, heart pounding, still gripping the officer's folded note in my pocket. "I can't believe he was a spy," I whispered. Gaspard turned to me. "He saved hundreds of lives. Used his position to leak Nazi operations, sabotage weapons, redirect convoys. We called him the Raven because he flew above suspicion." I looked out the window. "He died, buy me a chance." "Yes," Gaspard said. "Don't waste it." We drove through the night. At dawn, we reached an old farmstead tucked into the mountains. They had food, dry clothes, a map spread across the table, and a plan. "You'll go with Marcel," Gaspard told me. "He knows the way across the border. From there, French command can pass you back to Allied lines." Marcel, a thin man with bright eyes and an old rifle, nodded. "It won't be easy. Patrols have tripled since the bombing." I stared at the map. "Let's do it." We waited until dusk, then left on foot. No more trucks. Too loud. Too obvious. We walked for hours, avoiding roads, moving through the forest. Owls hooted in the dark. Every crunch of snow beneath our boots made me flinch. Then, around midnight, we saw it. A bridge. It crossed a frozen river between 2 hills. On the other side, freedom. Southward, Allied outposts. A chance to finally go home. But as we neared the bridge, Marcel raised a hand. We stopped. Across the bridge, 3 soldiers. Nazi uniforms. Rifles slung casually. A checkpoint. "There's usually only one," Marcel whispered. "Something's changed." I looked around. No other way across, unless we backtrack 20 kilometers. What do? We wait. Hope they leave. But they didn't. Hours passed. The cold bit into our fingers. My wound throbbed again. I could feel it leaking beneath the bandage. Finally, Marcel turned to me. "We'll bluff our way through. You still have a uniform under your coat." I hesitated. "Yes." He nodded. "I'll act like your prisoner. We march past like you're transferring me. You speak enough German to get by, right?" I can try." He smiled weakly. "That's the spirit." We stood. I slipped off the coat, revealing the gray Nazi uniform beneath. Marcel tied his hands loosely with rope. "Don't mess this up," he whispered. We approached the bridge. The guards looked up. One barked something in German. I saluted. "Gefangener, Befehl von Hauptmann Keller." I said, try to mimic the accent I'd heard so many times. The lead guard squinted at me, then stepped closer. He pointed at Marcel. "Was Hatter getting? What did he do?" I hesitated. "Sabotage," I replied. "Er hat, Zug gesprengt." He blew up a train. The guard stared at me for a long moment. Then something shifted in his face. His eyes narrowed. "You're not Franz Bauer," he said slowly. My stomach dropped. He stepped back and raised his rifle. "Run," I shouted. I yanked Marcel's rope loose and shoved him forward. Bullets cracked past us. We sprinted across the bridge, boots skidding on ice. A round tore through my sleeve. Marcel fired back, hitting one of them in the leg. Another guard screamed and fell. We reached the end of the bridge, ducking behind a large boulder. I pulled my pistol, fired 3 times. Then silence. Smoke drifted over the bridge. Marcel turned to me, blood running down his arm. "We're alive," he breathed. But just as we stood to move, a low rumble echoed behind us. Then we saw it, a tank, rolling out of the trees, heading straight for us. The tank growled forward like a beast from a nightmare. Snow crunched beneath its treads. Its turrets swung in our direction. I could feel its engine vibrating through the ground as it drew closer. Marcel grabbed my arm. "We have to move. Now." We sprinted into the trees, ducking branches and leaping over roots. The forest was thick, but the tank wasn't stopping. It plowed through shrubs and young trees like they were nothing. A spotlight swept across the woods, casting long, eerie shadows. Then came the first shot. Boom! The explosion threw us forward. A pine tree splintered and crashed to the ground behind us. My ears rang. Snow showered down like ash from a fire. "We can't outrun it." I shouted. "There's a ridge ahead," Marcel yelled back. "If we make it over, they won't risk following. Too steep." We pushed on, lungs burning, boots slipping on icy rocks. Behind us, the tank fired again. The ground erupted to our left. I lost my footing and tumbled into a shallow ditch. Marcel yanked me up, dragging me along. We reached the ridge just as the tank's engine roared louder. At the top, Marcel turned and hurled a grenade he'd kept hidden. It rolled beneath the tank. Boom! The blast was smaller than we'd hoped. The tank didn't explode, but it did stop. Black smoke poured from the side. The engine sputtered. We didn't wait to see what happened next. Down the ridge we went, sliding, tumbling, anything to get away. At the bottom, a narrow frozen stream wound through the forest. Marcel dropped to his knees, gulping air. "I think we lost them," he said between breaths. I nodded, then winced. Blood soaked my shirt. The bullet had grazed my ribs. The bandage around my head was stained again, darker this time. My vision blurred for a moment. "You're hit bad," Marcel said. "We need shelter." He helped me up, and we limped on until we found a small cave near the riverbank. Inside, it was dry and hidden by brush. He lit a small fire, just enough for warmth, and dressed my wound with snow and cloth. For a while, we didn't speak. Then I looked at him. "You risked everything back there." "What?" He shrugged. "You're carrying something bigger than just yourself. Orders, intel, names. If you die, it dies too." I pulled the officer's paper from my pocket. It was crumpled, wet with sweat and snow, but still legible. "The Raven flew south," I whispered. "He wanted me to find someone to deliver this." Marcel stared into the fire. "Gaspert's still out there. He'll get it where it needs to go." Suddenly, a twig snapped outside the cave. We froze. Marcel blew out the fire with a single breath. Another snap. Closer. We both reached for our weapons, but I could barely hold mine steady. A shadow passed the entrance. Then, a voice. Soft. Careful. French. "Marcel." We relaxed. A young woman stepped into the firelight. Short, dark-haired, with a scarf wrapped tightly around her face. She carried a rifle and a sack slung over her shoulder. "Camille," Marcel said, exhaling. "I thought you were in Grenoble." "I was," she replied, dropping the sack. "But then I heard about the raid. Gaspert's network is scattered." She turned to me. "You must be the American." I didn't know what to say, but she smiled. You've caused quite the stir." She handed Marcel a fresh map and 3 ration packs. "New orders. There's a safe house in the town of Remy, west of here. About 2 days' walk. From there, a contact will take you through the Pyrenees." Marcel looked at me. "You think you can make it?" I nodded. "Barely. But I had to." Camille stayed until dawn, then vanished into the woods. We packed up and moved quietly. The snow was lighter now, the air sharp but not deadly. The sky turned blue above the trees. Hope started to creep back in. But that evening, as we neared the edge of a village, we saw smoke. Thick, black, rising in columns. Buildings were on fire. And in the center of it all, a Nazi truck, its back doors wide open, corpses on the ground, and, standing beside them, a familiar figure. Scar over his eye. The officer, the one who helped me escape. But something was wrong. He was alive. He wasn't bleeding, and he was smiling. Then he looked up and saw us, and raised his pistol. I froze. That scar, that face, it was him. The same officer who dragged me through the snow, shoved a paper into my hand, and told me to run. But now he was clean, upright, commanding, smiling, wearing a Nazi officer's cap again, and pointing a pistol right at me. My heart thudded in my ears. I took a step back. Marcel didn't hesitate. He fired first. Crack. The bullet missed. The officer ducked behind a burning cart. Shouts erupted. 2 soldiers dashed from behind a barn, rifles raised. I hit the ground just as a bullet whizzed past my head. "This way," Marcel shouted, grabbing my coat and yanking me behind a stone wall. I tumbled, coughing from the smoke. "What is happening?" I gasped. "I don't know," Marcel said, reloading. "I thought you said he was dead." "I saw him hit. I left him bleeding." Marcel peeked over the wall and fired twice more. 1 soldier dropped. The other took cover behind a well. "This doesn't make sense," I said, panic rising. "He was a spy. He helped me." Marcel's jaw clenched. Maybe that was the plan all along. The thought made my blood go cold. Was I just a pawn? Did he use me to get the paper? Did he let me escape? More gunfire. The villagers were gone. Houses burned. The whole place had been wiped out. We had to run. Marcel pulled me toward the back of a small butcher's shop. We kicked down the back door and rushed through hanging slabs of meat. Blood dripped from the ceiling. It smelled like rot. We burst out the side and into a narrow alley. Smoke covered us like a curtain. We ran through it, coughing, until we reached the edge of the village. A motorbike sat abandoned beside a fallen soldier. "Keys," Marcel muttered. He patted the body, found them, and shoved them into the ignition. "Get on." I jumped on the back, clinging tightly. The engine roared, and we sped off through the trees. Bullets followed us, then silence. 15 minutes later, we stopped by a creek. Marcel turned off the engine, both of us panting hard. I slid off and dropped to my knees, hands in my hair. "That wasn't possible," I whispered. He was dying. I saw it. Marcel squatted beside me, pulling out the folded paper from my pocket. "This? What if he wanted us to deliver it? What if this is what he needed us to do?" "No," I said. He looked scared. He didn't fake that. "Then maybe," Marcel said grimly, "someone else saved him. Someone higher up. Someone who needed him alive." I shook my head. None of it made sense. But I knew one thing. If he was still alive and working for the Nazis again, I was in danger. We had to move. We followed a deer trail through the woods, making our way west toward Remy. The smoke from the village still tainted the air, but the trees grew thick again, hiding us from above. Just before sundown, we stopped to rest. Marcel made a small fire in a dugout pit, shielded by rocks. He handed me a tin of sardines and some dry biscuits. I nibbled at them, barely tasting anything. What if I'm the only one who really knew? I asked, what if that officer switched sides? Marcel looked at me. Or what if he never picked one? We slept in shifts that night. But in the early hours of the morning, I woke to the sound of someone stepping on twigs nearby. I sat up fast, pistol in hand. Marcel was already awake, crouched low. We heard it again, branches moving. Someone was circling. I pointed toward a thick patch of pine trees. We crept toward it. Then, from the shadows, a voice. You shouldn't have run. It was him, the officer, closer than before, and alone. I raised my pistol. What? I shouted. Why are you doing this? He stepped out of the trees, unarmed, hands raised. You still don't understand, he said softly. I'm a spy. I was always the spy. Then why were you in that village? Marcel snapped. Why were you smiling while they burned it down? His eyes narrowed. Because I needed them to believe I was still one of them. They were suspicious after I helped you escape. So I gave them a performance. Liar, I growled. He reached into his coat, slowly, and pulled out a second folded paper. He tossed it on the ground between us. I picked it up. It was a copy of the same coordinates. The same phrase, the raven flew south. 2 copies, he said, just in case you didn't make it. I looked up. How do we know you're telling the truth? He stepped forward slowly. Because if I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. Behind him, something glinted. A rifle. Someone else. A shot fired. The officer gasped and dropped to his knees, blood blooming from his chest. I turned just in time to see the muzzle flash from a hidden sniper. Marcel fired back. Another shot rang out. Marcel fell beside me, clutching his shoulder. More footsteps. Voices. At least 4 men coming through the trees. The officer on the ground wheezed, blood pouring from his mouth. I told you they were always watching. Then he collapsed. Dead. Again. And this time for real. And we were surrounded. The footsteps closed in fast. Branches snapped. Shadows moved between the trees. Marcel groaned beside me, his hand pressed to the bullet wound in his shoulder. I gripped my pistol tight, ready to fight, but I knew we didn't stand a chance. Then, a sharp whistle cut through the air. All movement stopped. More rustling. Then, out from the trees, a tall man in a leather coat stepped forward. His beard was thick, eyes sharp, rifle slung on his back. He raised both hands, palms out. Don't shoot, he said in perfect English. We're not here to kill you. I didn't lower my pistol. He stepped closer. I'm Gaspard. My heart skipped. Marcel gasped weakly. You're late. Gaspard motioned to the man behind him. Secure the area. Help him. 2 resistance fighters rushed to Marcel's side, lifting him gently. Another knelt beside the dead officer, checked his pulse, and shook his head. He's gone, the man confirmed. Gaspard turned to me. You have a paper? I reached into my coat, pulled out the bloodied, crumpled sheet, and handed it to him. He read it, then looked at me for a long time. You went through hell to bring this, he said. We didn't think anyone would survive that route. Not after the betrayal in Montigny. Was it all real? I asked. The spy, the story, the raven, or were we just pawns? Gaspard looked down at the officer's body. He was both, a hero and a liar. He walked the line between truth and deception so long. He forgot which side he was on. But in the end, he folded the paper gently. He gave us what we needed. I helped the others carry Marcel through the woods to a cabin hidden deep in the hills. There we cleaned and stitches wound. Gaspard gave me a warm coat, soup, and silence. That night, by the fire, I stared into the flames. I had been shot in the head, woken up in the enemy's uniform, dragged through snow, fire, and blood. I had trusted a man who betrayed everything, and maybe saved more than he destroyed. Marcel sat beside me, pale but breathing. When we make it back, he said softly, what do we tell them? I shrugged. The truth. He chuckled bitterly. Which part? I smiled faintly. The part where we lived. The next morning, Gaspard led us to a hidden trail through the Pyrenees. On the 3rd day, we crossed the French-Spanish border under fog and frost. Weeks later, I finally stepped into an Allied safe zone in Gibraltar, weak but standing. They checked my papers, took my statement, debriefed me for hours. When I told them the full story, some didn't believe me. But one officer, a British intelligence man with sharp eyes, said only one thing before handing me back the photo I'd kept in my pocket all this time. Welcome back, soldier. You were never meant to come back wearing that uniform. But maybe that's what saved us all. I stood at the dock that evening, watching ships roll over the water. Behind me, the war still raged. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something like peace. Even if the world would never know the truth. Even if history never wrote our names. I knew what happened. They shot me in the head. But when I woke up, I was in a Nazi uniform. And somehow, I survived.